Hey everyone, so glad to have you. We are with Midwest Chingona. This is our Chingona oh my gosh, now I can't even talk. We were laughing before we got on this. So.
Yes, Chingona Pride.
Yes. And I have the amazing Lori Peters back with me to co-host. How are you, Lori?
I'm doing fine. How are you, Deanna?
I'm doing good. And it looks like you have your backdrop perfectly set for what we're going to talk about tonight. Well, with that, we have an amazing guest, Erik Erazo. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I know I've been trying to get like a conversation with you, and you're like crazy busy. I'm crazy busy, and we just never seem to like connect. So I'm so excited to have you finally on here to talk about all the amazing work you do.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So let's kind of jump in. Can you begin by telling us your story and like how you got here to Olathe? Because you are an educator at Olathe High School, right?
Yeah, I'm the coordinator of diversity and engagement now, but I've been a whole bunch of different things throughout my years. So I'll kind of start at the beginning and work my way up. So I actually grew up in the Mission District in San Francisco. And so I grew up around lowriders like my whole life. If you guys ever get the opportunity to look up the Mission District, I mean, it's the Spanish Harlem of San Francisco. And I remember just going with my mom to go, shopping. And over there, you don't take a car, you walk everywhere, and just seeing the mini trucks and everything back in the 80s and just falling in love. And it was funny because my mom would like yank me like, vengas up acá, don't look at that, and I'd be like, nah, that's cool. I want that. So, grew up kind of doing that. But we ended up moving from the city to a smaller town for 2 years, where it'd be like the comparison of going from like Casey-Mo to Blue Valley. And it was a little rough because I felt really out of place. And then we left there and went to another town called Hayward, California, where it was a little bit more like home. But unfortunately I had gotten in with the wrong crowd throughout the years. And at 15, my then girlfriend got pregnant. 16, I was a dad. Around the same time, I actually got kicked out of regular high school, and then I got kicked out of continuation school. And then I got kicked out of home studies. So at that point, I really didn't have a lot of choices to where to go to school. They had told me if I wanted to come back to school, I had to go to Oakland, California, to enroll there and see if they would take me. And I didn't want to go to Oakland. So it was like, well, you got to do what you got to do. So I basically left school and I started working at a bakery where my dad worked, and did what I had to do to, pay the bills and the doctor bills for my daughter and all that kind of stuff. And at 18 years old, I met my current wife, and I had my second daughter. So now I'm 18 with 2 kids. And I knew that I had to do something, I had to better myself somehow. So I wanted to get my my high school diploma, but still they wouldn't take me back. So believe it or not, I was reading Lowrider magazine, and I saw an ad for a high school in Florida. So I filled out the paperwork, sent in the money, and took the test, and was able to get this high school diploma from a private school in Florida. So
okay, so wait, you went from so you were still in California?
Yeah, the Florida diploma, it was just sent to me. It was all by mail. I guess it would be like online today.
Oh my
God. Online virtual.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I get my diploma, and I'm like, well, now I want to go to college to do something. So I always wanted to be a mechanic. I'd always been into lowriders. And so I applied to Sequoia Institute of Automotive Technology, and everything was cool. But then I had to take a high school equivalency test to get into the school. So even though I had gotten this diploma, it was quite easy to get. I really hadn't been in school since like the 9th grade. So I failed it once, twice. And then they said, if you come back and you fail it again, you're going to have to wait a while. So I went to a program where retired school teachers would help people that were illiterate. And it was called Literacy Plus at the public library. And so this retired teacher helped me understand the basics. And I was able to I barely made it, but I made it. I passed the test. and went to Sequoia Institute of Automotive Technology. So I'm there. I go to school for 2 years, became a mechanic. I get my first job at a dealership, Hayward Mitsubishi. And, this dude starts tripping on me about where you from, blue, blue, blue. And we ended up, getting into an altercation, and I end up not working there anymore. And it was like, this stinks. Like, I need to get out of here. To me, it was like, if I don't leave this area, I'm never going to be able to do something with myself. So I prayed real hard, and I said, Lord, show me the way. Like, I want out. And on the way home, there was this big sign that said, En el army sí se puede. You can do it in the army. So I was like, I wonder if they can get me out of the hood, So I went down there and I filled out the paperwork. And luckily, all my mishaps had been, when I was a juvenile. And so, I asked him, I said, hey, man, if I sign up, can you get me out of here? He's like, yeah. Well, it was about 8 months later. I was in Germany, which is a little further than I wanted to go, but it got me out of there. And so I go to Germany. My twins were born there. So now I'm like 22 with 4 kids, and in the military. My time was up, and, I could have re-enlisted, but I had 4 little kids. And at this time, we're going to Iraq and all these things are happening. So I decided I probably needed to go back home and find a career. But when I get back to the Bay Area, it's like time had just been frozen, like it stood still, like everybody was older, but nobody had grown up. As a matter of fact, one of the first conversations I had with an old friend of mine, he's like, hey, homie, I'm going to get a job. I was like, what, homie, that's cool, right? And he's like, yeah, and I'm going to save some money. I'm like, that's what's up. And he's like, and then I'm going to buy a pound, right? And I was like, man, this isn't where I want to be, anymore. And so I had a cousin that lived in Kansas and had lived here for a long time. And she wanted me to come down to KCK to look at possibly opening a restaurant. And so I came down here to look at that restaurant. It was actually over there by the old Indian Springs Mall. And the restaurant I didn't think was going to work out. But while I was down here, I got one of those home buying guides from the Price Chopper down there. And I could not believe how cheap the houses were here compared to where I was coming from, Like, my dad's house was from the 1950s with no AC, no heat, had termite damage, and it sold at auction for $650,000. So when I come here and I'm looking at houses for $100,000, I'm like, nah, that can't be right. So I applied for a home loan. I literally had like no income here, but I applied for a home loan anyway. I go back to the city looking for work, and I was looking for work in security work because I figured, I just got out of the military. But, there was a ton of people looking for work, and being bilingual in California is like, cool. So is everybody else, And so I get a call. Well, I've literally just totally bummed out. And they're like, hey, you've been pre-approved. Mind you, this is before the economy collapsed. So they were giving loans to monkeys. And so I get called down here to, she says I'm pre-approved. So I come down here. I left my wife and kids in El Cerrito, California, in an apartment that cost $1,300 a month. I have no idea how I'm going to get them to Kansas or how I'm going to pay the rent again. Just prayed and said, Lord, take me there. I take my little 93 Toyota Tercel and drive down here to Kansas. The very first day that I'm actually here, I asked my cousin, I said, hey, can you take me to a security company? Maybe they'll hire me until I get a job as a mechanic. So she took me to find a job. They said, yes, can you start tomorrow? I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll do it. And they said, okay, cool, we're going to send you to a high school. And I was like, nah, what else you got? And they said, that's what we got. So about 17 years ago, I landed at Olathe North High School as a security guard with zero intentions of being an educator. But when I got here, I saw kids that were walking, talking, behaving like gang members, and I didn't understand why. When I grew up, I'd look out my window and I would see, people getting shot. And over here, there was like a lady jogging with a dog. You know what I mean? So I'm like, why are you doing this? But what I realized was that the kids really didn't fit in, and they felt about that big, and if they could pretend to be gang members, then they were, that big because people were scared of them and things like that. And I was like, man, I wish somebody could talk to these kids. So I would go up to the counselors and I'd be like, hey, you need to talk to this kid over here. And they'd be like, why don't you do it? And I'm like, nah, that ain't my thing. Like, you need to talk to him. But little by little, I started, talking to kids and doing this kind of thing. And eventually they said, do you want to be the ISS guy and work here? And I was like, sure. So that's the in-school suspension guy. And I started working doing that. And then every so often they would call me to other schools. And one time they asked me if I would go to see this little kid, this middle schooler who had came from Texas and he had been in the gangs, and he was all tatted up, and he was real young. And I'm talking to him, and of course I'm all covered up because I'm trying to fit into the education world as it was presented to me at the time. And this kid says, man, you don't know nothing about this. You don't know what I've gone through. You don't know about this gang life. And I'm like, hold up. So I pull up my sleeves and I'm like, let me tell you what's up, man. And he started paying attention to me, and I was like talking to him, and man, I tell you, I've never felt something more real. Like it's saying, that's why you're here. Your life wasn't a mistake. Everything you've gone through was for a reason. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to do this thing. So I, with 4 kids at home, barely making the bills, making very little money, but I started going to KCKCC after work. And then eventually I moved up to Pitt State, where I got my bachelor's, and eventually I got my master's at Pitt State as well. And in the process, I was able to create this club. And so, I've gotten a lot of attention. And to me, it's kind of like common sense, because what I did was look at what the gangs had done with me and all my homeboys growing up, right? They get you when you're in elementary, and they entice you in middle school age. They give you more responsibility. And by the time you're in high school, you're in too deep to quit. And I was like, man, that system works, right? Because it's relationship building, right? The new term that now we're just barely discovering has been there for a long time. And so I started doing that. I started going to elementaries and talking to kids about, just homework or life or goals. Nobody talked to me about going to college, and so talking to them about that. And by the time they're in middle school, more responsibility, like taking field trips or doing community service projects, clothing drives. By the time they're in high school, they're in too deep to quit. They identify as HLC members because that's what they've been since elementary. And so I went from like 12 kids to about 500 in a few years, district wide. And so that's been the model. And in between all that, as it got real academic, I found that there was a gap with reaching our at-risk boys, because, going and asking a kid, hey, so I knew that really for me to be able to work with them, I had to spend time with them and talk to them. And really the best venue is to bring, mentors after school from the community to talk with them. But how do you get a kid that's already skipping, that's already not coming to school, and come after school and kick it with some grown-ups? So I was like, man, how am I going to do this? So I did what I know how to do. I went out and I got a Lowrider bike and I built it. And I was just like sitting on it in the hallway as the kids were coming through. And they'd be like, man, that's a cool bike. I'd be like, yeah, it's all right. How'd you do it or whatever? I'd be like, man, I built them after school. You can come kick it if you want. Can I get one? Maybe, And so I gave them that excuse that they were looking for, that they weren't coming to hang out with mentors. They were coming to build Lowrider bikes. And so we started having the kids come over after school, and I started inviting mentors. And in the process of all this, I started asking kids, at the time we were having similar, like we are today, some tension between the police departments and our communities. And I had asked the kids, I was like, man, how many of y'all know the police department, like your interactions with them? And they're like, oh, we hate them. Or what has been your interactions? Well, they've all been negative, right? I've gotten pulled over or whatever the case may be. And I was like, you know what? This is a good opportunity to also reach the police department, because, I'm sure they have some biases too, right? What have their interactions been with young Latino males? So I went and I spoke to Officer Logan, Bonnie, and the chief of police, and slowly but surely we developed to where we would have an officer come down and start hanging out with the kids and mentoring them. And we ended up building a Lowrider bike for the police department in Olathe that sits in the chief's office today. And the kids built such an amazing relationship with some of these officers that come down, to the point that some of the kids that I had that said they hated the police actually wanted to grow up to be cops, because they saw these guys as mentors. And the way the program works is the kids build a lowrider bike that they get to keep when they graduate, but they also build bikes that we get donated from the community or from the police department, the ones that they pick up that nobody claims, and they refurbish them, and then we give them away to the community. And so far with that particular group of boys, we're at 100% graduation rate, and 100% of our kids have gone to college, and 100% of them are going to college with a scholarship. So we've been very successful with that program. So that's kind of the gist, I guess. I'm sure, there's a lot more to it, but that's the gist of the club.
Eric, I just gotta tell you, like, this is a story that needs to be like, because I've known you because of my husband, Aaron, and being in the lowrider world, it's like not that big here in Kansas City. It's big, right, but not that big, so you kind of know everybody. And I've known a little bit about your story, but everything that you just said right now, and just the snippets, it's like, my God, you have gone through so much, and to get to where you're at right now, and not just get where you're at right now, but you're giving back so much in the process. You should be like on every freaking talk show or something that's for inspiration, for real, because there's so many kids going through what you're going through right now. And I know Lori can probably talk to that, having been an educator now and working with kids. But wow, I just thank you for being on here and telling your story, for real. And I'll let Lori ask some questions, 'cause I'm sure she has some.
So, when just hearing you speak, I think it just parallels or mirrors actually some of the things Deanna and I went through and through our teenage years, not to glorify it, but we too were teenage parents and struggling with getting through high school. So I was just like, man, is he singing my story to me? Because this just can't be the Latino Chicano story of this is our life, and then we figure out how we're going to overcome it. But I think what you're doing out in the Olathe School District is amazing. But I wanted to laugh when you said that it's like when you went from Kansas City, Missouri to Blue Valley, because if you don't understand it, I mean, well, that's a vast difference that you experienced.
Yeah, it was definitely something, but I'll tell you, that experience really helped me be who I am today, because it exposed me to a world that I didn't know existed. And once I left it, we were only there for 2 short years, and I was the only kid with an ELL teacher. They literally had to hire a teacher just for me. But I got to see stuff that I would have never seen before, and to be able to strive for that and say, you know what, it doesn't have to be the way it is. If you would have asked me prior to going to that town, I would have just thought that life was people getting shot at and just all this negativity. It's just the way it is. I remember being a little kid, and I think it was like 1992 when Home Alone came out, and just even seeing that neighborhood, where Macaulay Culkin lived, and thinking like it couldn't be real. You know what I mean? Because it wasn't what I saw. And to be able to open my eyes to that world, and then when I went in the military, and then it really opened my eyes. I leave the country, and my best friends, are from all over the country, and that's really giving me perspective on how to be able to work with our kids and show them more, and introduce them to this idea of getting an education, which I always tell kids the best way to protest is to get an education. Because we could sit there and scream, yell, moan, put stuff on Facebook, but our voices aren't being heard until we're sitting in those committees, or we're sitting there talking to the right people, and they're hearing us because we have an education. So it's super important for us to get that education. Now, the problem is how it gets delivered a lot of times to our youth, where it doesn't identify, right? If you ask a kid, and I do all the time, what does success look like to you? A lot of times our kids go, man, it looks like some white dude in a suit, making it don't look like some brown dude with tattoos riding a lowrider. You know what I mean? And so it's super important for our kids to know that you don't erase your identity like we've been told that we have to do if we're going to be successful, right? We get told all the time that if you want to be successful, you better play the game, look the part, because that's success. Well, I could be a successful Latino that's educated and doing great things and still keep my culture. And that's the fear a lot of our kids get, because they're not only are you telling them that you have to give up your culture, you're telling them you got to get into a new one. And you're going like, dang, homie, I don't know how I'm going to be able to adapt to this. Like, that's scary. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how to talk like that or walk like that or move like that. And I'm supposed to do that. And that's what I didn't want to do in my club, especially in the lowrider piece. I wanted the kids to know, man, I want you to graduate. I want you to go to college. And if you want to do that on a 64 hitting the 3-wheel down the boulevard, orale, more power to you, man. You can keep that culture. So,
right.
it's just super important, I think, for our kids to be exposed to other things, but also understand that what they got is beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, God, I know, Lori, it's like, I think you're probably one of the first ones that we've had that you can relate almost parallel, even though you're from California. I'm born and raised here in Kansas City. It's like, our worlds are just like this. And I didn't find out till later in life that I could actually be something to this point. And it's now taken me until the age of 45 to be like, wow, I have power and I can do.
You're 45?
Almost.
No, I'm kidding.
Thanks, Lori. Thank you. And that's why the kids I work with now, I'm like, you have such opportunities now. But I think you're right. You're so right when you say that, because all they see, especially here in Kansas City, is white people in the suits making money. And it's like, it's hard for them to see that other people like them that are, maybe have tattoos, ride a lowrider, but are doing great. It's not easy for them to see that.
I think one thing as educators, and Deanna with her outreach and her art foundation, we have to share our stories. We have to share where we come from, what we've been through, our struggle. And that's one thing that I love about Dr. Bazell, my superintendent with KCPS. He's not afraid to tell you he finished his high school education through night school because he had to do what he had to do to survive and provide for his family. So the students that I work with, I share my story, and they're like, oh, so you do understand us. And that's where I think sometimes, not all, but some teachers get hung up. They don't want to share their story. And even white teachers, you got a story to share. Mm-hmm. You need to share it. Not everybody was born, with a silver spoon. You got a story, share it.
That's right. Yeah, no, I think it's super important. That's one thing I get a lot of times from different educators when I go around, the country speaking about things like this, and people immediately go, well, I'm not going to have the access that you have to a student because I don't look like you. I don't have the same background. And I go, no, you're tripping. It's all about you care about him and or her. And they know that you legit care, right? Like you care, man, they're all in, like it doesn't matter what your specific background is or where you come from. But if you care and you're willing to learn, like, they're going to fill you in. They're going to tell you, about them, and we're very welcoming into our culture. Like immediately we're like, let me bring you some tamales. Like, let's go to the Chingona on Saturday. Like, you know what I mean? And I think that's the main piece that I would always want educators to know, is that they can make a huge impact by caring, by listening, and by establishing relationships. And one of the things that I get a lot from educators is they go, well, I want to have a relationship with every kid, but I got so many kids to see a day. How am I going to do that? I can't take them all to lunch. I can't, how do I do that? And I go, you know what? When you're chilling in your computer for the first 3 minutes and those kids are walking in that room and they're talking about what whack movie they saw over the weekend, or what, Machine Gun Kelly's, rebound song on Eminem, like bust in there and just be like, yo, I thought that movie was cool. What are you talking about? You know what I mean? Just those 3 minutes of being involved in that conversation. You hear a kid talk about skateboarding. Get on YouTube for like 5 minutes and look up some terms about skateboarding. And then tomorrow I'll be like, yo, bro, I wish I could do an ollie, man. That'd be tight. You're like, what? You know what I mean? Like you know about that a little bit? What's up? Teach me. That's enough to start that relationship and to make, want to talk to you and open up, because that's the biggest piece. You look at a lot of our colored kids, what's wrong with you? Nothing. Tell me what's up. Nothing. Leave me alone, right? Like, I don't want to talk. What am I going to tell you? You're just going to trip out on me, right? You're an adult or you're a teacher. There's no reason for that.
Mm-hmm. Agree. Oh my gosh. We have a comment here from Carlos Alvarado Carrillo. Eric, if you need a college graduate to come to talk to the kids sometime, let me know. I don't have any tattoos, but I am Mexican.
For sure, man. Love it.
So, okay, I'm just going to say, because Eric, every time that I see your kids, and I was just telling Lori this, especially at the festival, the Latino Arts Festival, that you guys come. I mean, they come on a bus, get all the bikes. These kids are in charge. We know when they're coming because we see the bus and they're ready, right? And they all come out and they get on their bikes and they ride together, right? They place their bikes just like they should, and they are so amazing. And they're young kids, and it's just like, how does that make you feel?
Are these your students or are these your kids?
No, these are my students. So
there's like 30 of them.
Are these your students?
Yeah, these are my students, and I'll tell you why it worked. And one big piece that I think that I need to mention, and I hope they're watching, but
that's amazing.
A long time ago, and the kids that were in my club initially, 2 of them actually worked for me. One still does, and he is a mentor for the bike club, and he's going to school to be a teacher. And one of them just got hired to teach. And so these 2 boys were my, at-risk kiddos back when they were young, and now they're mentors to these kids. And I'm actually, one of the kids in my bike club now is the son of one of my first students. So it is a family thing. I mean, when you see those kids rolling, it is a family thing, and they have a legacy in the club, and they know that they can be themselves, but still be proud that they're graduating. Our president, his nickname is Limpy. Limpy just graduated, and he's got a full ride at KCKCC. This dude was telling me, 3 years ago, man, I don't know if I'm gonna graduate. And it's like we ride together and we hold each other accountable too. When one of my kids is like not doing what they're supposed to do, the other kid's gonna be like, "Hey, homie, I thought you was gonna raise up that math grade. Let me help you." And we have mentors come back, several mentors that come back that are prior students that maybe they can't be there all the time, but they come in as much as they can and mentor the kids. One of them works over at Bill's paint shop, and he donates the paint and he helps, and it is a family.
So, Eric, you brought up a good point, because this is something that Aaron and myself, just being, part of this, like my whole life, my uncle and his brother built lowriders in their garages in KCK and did that.
My uncle did too.
What?
Same drivers.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that, Lori. See? We
and the stilettos on pedals. I mean, look.
It just happened.
We just been there.
We have. So here, especially like with Aaron, and trying to do better for our kids, and, moving up north, and, still have all the lowriders, we never changed anything. And, how do you feel it's been, being a part of this, lowrider amazing lifestyle here in Kansas? I mean, you're in Olathe, I'm up north, and, my husband's over on Truman Road. But there's just this stigma, and I feel like sometimes it gets better and then sometimes it doesn't, but there's just a stigma around who we are, what we do, and why we do it. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So 17 years ago when I started here, I knew then that if I would have brought up the idea or the concept of building lowriders with kids, I don't know what that would have looked like. It took me a while to really prove myself first, I think, to the community. But also to show the positive side of lowriding to everybody, and to get the buy-in was huge. And not only is my school district, which by the way has been always supportive of the crazy ideas that are straight out of the box that I've had, but I have a lowrider bike at the chief's office, and we're building a Crown Victoria lowrider police car for the Olathe Police Department that your husband came and helped paint. I think he was all covered in flake when he got home that day, and so we're going to have the chief of police, who's a good friend of mine, Mike, hitting switches. and bringing them in our culture. And it's really just about being open to talk and not feeling attacked. A lot of times I think that we get like, we're abrasive with people because we feel right off the bat like, nah, they don't like me. Nah, they don't want to do nothing about this. So I'm just going to sit there and maybe mean mug them or not talk to them. I'm the opposite. I'll go up to people when they're looking at me kind of crazy, like this dude's all tatted up or whatever. And I'll go, hey, how you doing? And strike up a conversation. And next thing you know, they're like, hey, would you like to be part of this board or whatever the case may be? I moved to Edgerton, which is a tiny town of 1,600 people south of Olathe. And when I got there, people said, oh, man, be careful, man. Like, well, you know what? I went and talked to people. I ended up being a planning commissioner for the city. I would go around town hitting switches. People would get in my car. And, so I think that, yes, there's a stigma there. But you know what? There are a couple things that we need to do different, too. I mean, three-wheeling on red lights, probably a bad idea. You know what I mean? Like, we have to hold ourselves accountable too, just like the kids hold themselves accountable in the bike club. We need to hold ourselves accountable in the community and build bridges. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know that's something that I think we're still struggling with, and I don't know if it's and I totally respect that completely, because I think that is so hard for a lot of us to do that, because you grow up. I mean, you grow up in this world of not always being accepted. I've been that way my whole life. Aaron come from Mexico City and having to endure what he's had to endure being here. And it's just one of those things. It's like, you just never feel like it's ever going to end, So you come to a point almost where it's like, okay, we're just going to do this,
Right.
We're still who we are. But at the same time, it's tiring and it's frustrating, and it just causes a lot of angst. And I think for even our own personal family, it does, because at the end of the day, just like the story you're saying, we're all family. I mean, when you come into these lowrider communities and these car clubs, and even if you're a solo rider, we have each other's backs like crazy.
Okay.
It is a
Right?
true family.
It is. And it's a wonderful family to be part of, because, you belong. And I think that's what I like to show to people, how family oriented we are, the barbecues we do. And, it's just important for people to really see our culture outside of what Hollywood has portrayed our culture to be.
Yeah.
I will tell you, my experience was when I came. So in California, for me, low riding was a way of gang prevention. It always has been, because you were at home working on your ride, and the car club would tell you like, nah, you better not be slipping because you're going to make us all look bad. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I got here to the Midwest, I was like, man, this is a little different. And I think that because low riding got brought here through gangster rap, through, it was a different introduction to that. We got a lot of guys that are doing it old school with the oldies and things like that. But I did see a little bit of a difference there. But I also think not only within our community, but just the way that people saw us was, part of an Eazy-E music video. You know what I mean? Like, or some, movie where the bad guys, riding a lowrider to escape the police, which probably wouldn't be a good idea.
That's very true. Lori, did you have questions? I don't want to keep.
No, I was laughing and I forgot what I was going to say. It'll come to me, but I do have something to say.
That's what I was going to say, because I keep talking and I'm like, I got to give you a chance.
No, you're fine.
So what is up next for you? Because I know you're a part of a lot of boards. Okay, so a lot of us in the community are working hard to be able to be a part of these organizations, boards, things like that. It comes up a lot in our communities on how do you do that? Who do you have to connect with? Why is it we always have to connect with somebody in order to be a part of something? Why are we not just building our own stuff? How did you get involved in all? And can you tell us what boards you're a part of and commissions and chairs?
Yeah, so boards, I'm part of El Centro board. I'm also part of UCS, which is a Johnson County Community Services program, essentially, that distributes money to different nonprofits and things. Olathe Communities That Care, disproportionate minority contact, which is through the criminal justice to make sure and see if there's a disproportionate minority contact when it comes to juveniles. Criminal Justice Committee, to look at reform and different programs and things like that. Citizens Police Advisory Council, which was CPAC, and that's where I get to sit down with the chief of police once a month and a group of community members. And not only do we get to discuss with him our opinions, but we also get to see footage from their body cams if they've been, somebody has said that they've done something wrong, and decide what we believe was or wasn't the case. And I'm sure I'm missing a few, but, really just working with, I try to get involved in the Olathe Latino Coalition, the NAACP, the Olathe chapter of the NAACP. I try to just get involved in as much as I possibly can. And I've been blessed that my job allows me to be part of these groups. But, to me, like I told you earlier, I remember back in California, we had a law that they wanted to pass called the 187 law that was going to prevent undocumented, folks from being able to go to the hospital or to even go to school. And I remember going out there and just being mad, and just like shouting and yelling and throwing stuff. And, oh man, homies, we were just mad. And I didn't feel heard. I just didn't feel like I was being heard. You know what I mean? And like, I really couldn't make a difference. And it angered me. And now, when I get in these boards, I'm being heard, you know what I mean? And I feel that. I really do feel that I've earned the respect that they sit there and they go, hey, Eric, what do you think we should do about this? And I see it implemented. And to me, that makes a big difference, because I don't want people of color to grow up in an atmosphere that's unfriendly or nasty to them. And even if it's not meant to be nasty, but just because we're ignorant, right? And ignorant is not a bad word. It's a reality. A lot of times people are uneducated about a specific group of people. And so there's things that are done that are culturally inappropriate, or they just don't understand why somebody's doing something. And so to be able to be a voice there and say, hey, this is what I think, and this is why I think that's happening. For example, kids are not filling out the paperwork. Well, their parents don't speak English and they work late. And so how can we get them to fill this paperwork in another way, right? Like little things like that I'm able to have an input with that eventually is going to help our people, have a better opportunity.
And it's the platforms that we're given, and the tables that we're blessed to sit around to be those voices for those students and those even adults.
Yeah.
And it seems like us three are blessed with big mouths that we're able to do it respectfully.
Exactly.
But I do remember my question was, if somebody like another school district wanted to reach out to you in regards to your Hispanic Leadership Club, would you be open to share your outline of your program if they wanted to adopt that program into their school district? Because I can say in the Kansas City, Missouri school district, we have a huge Latino, Latinx population, and our students, some struggle, but I think it would be something worth speaking to you about. That would especially get our male students involved.
And Eric,
I'm not going to say it's going to be me.
it will be Lori.
I got other irons in the fire.
Lori.
But usually it's the one who suggests it has to go and get the information and come back.
She ain't mad about it. Trust me. And Lori, that is like the most amazing question ever. And I was thinking that in my head, Eric, because you're exactly right, Lori. I don't think there's any programs like yours anywhere else in Kansas City, Missouri, or KCK, or anywhere around here. Would that be correct?
Yeah, there isn't.
When I read about it, I said, "There's the Lowriders and Olathe, little Lowrider bike."
Right. Yeah, I know that I talked to Mr. Cervantes over in KCK, and he was going to try to do it, and then COVID happened.
Oh.
I'm more than willing to talk to anybody, anytime, and give them step-by-step directions on how to put this thing together, because I just want to see kids be successful. And I'll tell you one thing that we've done is create an umbrella club, which is called Olathe Leadership Council, which oversees all the other clubs. And that's what we're going to be implementing this school year. So basically a hub club that, the Black Student Union, Hispanic Leadership, Latina Leadership, that they can all come to this hub and have access to whatever information we have in regards to scholarship or field trips or resources to do certain things, and to be supportive of the student population and give them a venue to be able to come in and talk and express themselves, and really as an education system to hear their point of view and their perspective of how we can better serve them, because they are the customer.
Mhm.
And I think the more that we can listen to them and understand how we need to start shifting the way that we do education to better serve them, the better outcome that we're going to have. This bike club is a prime example, 100% graduation rate. Not a lot of people get to say that. And what we're doing is building bikes and relationships. The kids don't even come after school to do math and science. I mean, they do it by building bikes, but that's not what we're talking about. And it has an impact in the classroom, because now they feel like they want to participate in the classroom because they see an outcome and a goal at the end. A lot of times we don't see goals, or we think they're so far away for us to reach because they're not presenting it as a reachable goal. So I am more than happy to talk to any school district anywhere.
Thank you.
Well, and Eric, I think that's phenomenal. Even when you said the part about the scholarship part, because this has been a little bit of a thing that I even talked to Randy Lopez about, who's on the Hispanic Development Fund, because what I've found, and I have kids, the age of almost getting to the point of they're going to have to start applying for scholarships, right? They're 4.0 students, so definitely need to. And I didn't do that. I have the same story as you. I got my GED. I had a kid at 15 and just went to work and, found out later in life, what I was called to do. But the biggest thing I see here in Kansas City in regards to the scholarships is that there's not a lot of people, especially in the Latino community, talking to our kids, like a mentoring program, saying, hey, this is what you need to do. And if you need help, get a hold of me and we will walk you through it. Right. Like almost like you said, like building that relationship, because education is so important. And I feel like I'm doing my own children a disservice because I don't have that part of the education system. Right. They'll probably know more about it than I would, but just the missed opportunities that are going to happen because I'm not educated in that piece of it. So do your kids
you're not educated yet.
There you go.
Once you get your oldest, you'll have it for you the second and then your next.
Exactly.
You're not educated yet.
Well, and I was lucky that my son, who's now going to be 27, he's about to graduate college as an accountant. How that happened, I have no idea. It's just one of those things. It's like everybody assumed that he was going to be the steps of, probably fail, never make anything out of himself, because I myself didn't do that. And these kids grow up to thinking that's what's going to happen. But again, the structure of our family and the people that loved him, it brought him to this place, and I'm so proud. He's going to be our first one to graduate from college. And it's like, I didn't even help with that because I didn't even know how. He could have probably gotten him tons of scholarships, but not knowing that piece of it just was a huge misservice to my children.
Absolutely. And what I try to do is a two-part deal. Number one, be supportive to the kid, walk them through, talk to them about FAFSA, do all this. But number two, that might even be more important than that, is I teach Spanish parenting classes, and a lot of them are focused on understanding the education system, the lingo, and how to support your kid. So I'll give you an example of a small one we do where it's a 5-week session and we talk about what is GPA, how it works, what are scholarships, what is FAFSA, all this kind of stuff. And then we end where Melissa Jimenez at Johnson County Community College lets us take a field trip or a tour of Johnson County Community College in Spanish from a prior Hispanic Leadership Club student that's there. And they give them a tour. And we've had moms and kids go to school at the same time. At JUCO, but it's super important because that the parents speak the language, and that's the problem I think for a lot of us, right? Like I mean, even I love my dad to death, and I'm maybe he's watching, but when I got my master's degree, he was like, "Oh, now you could be a teacher." Like, he didn't go to school, he didn't understand what that process was, and so when your parents ask you what you do today, you're like, you're not even gonna understand something, nothing.
Yes, exactly.
That's it, right? But if you can tell your kid, like, hey, listen, did you fill out the FAFSA yet? Because that sucker's due here in a minute. You're like, oh yeah, let me get on that, right? Because we're speaking the same language. And so I love seeing how the kids that I'm working with now, like I said, are kids of my older kids that I've worked with here. And I get to see how now they're being able to push that next generation forward because they understand the process. better than, their parents would have understood it. So it is important to just understand how to speak the lingo. So I encourage anybody who has access to being able to teach classes, even if it's on an online venue, to teach some of those basic things that sometimes some people take for granted. We don't grow up having parents talk about, no, he's going to go to K-State. No, he's going to KU. I mean, that's not, we don't hear that, right? So it's important to get introduced to that.
And it's even harder because my kids are into art, and one of them also is very much in the justice system, and it's phenomenal, right? But I have no clue, and just trying to find outlets here in Kansas City of people who do know that or do know about art schools, not just here in Kansas City, but beyond, is just so limited. And it's just finding those people here and there. I think I found one or two, and they're going to come on a podcast and talk about the scholarship process for art schools, just because the kids really, really need to know before they get in it, what are even my choices and what's good. You can go to any school and everybody's going to tell you they're good. You can read the comments,
right.
But you're not going to know until you step foot and you pay for that college, whether it's going to be good or not. Of course, we're all going to have our ups and downs, going away, doing whatever. But if you're not starting on the right foot at the beginning, it's, why does it have to be that way? That's my biggest thing. And I love what you're doing, Eric, and you're bringing something that's a very much needed thing that I just wish that was like beyond Olathe, like everywhere.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think that, we can all do it. The thing is, sometimes these things are overthought, right? It seems so complicated sometimes to get these things off the ground. Like, let's get a committee going so that we can have another committee meeting to write it on an easel that's going to be put up on the wall that we're going to look at next meeting. And man, get out there and start doing stuff. You know what I'm saying? Make it happen. You know what I mean? Get that classroom set up and just get these parents to come down. I started teaching parenting classes years ago, and they said, there's no budget for the food for this particular class, Eric. And I told the parents, I was like, hey, no hay dinero para comida, and they were like, okay, man, we had tamales. We had, I'll lie if I don't got money for food. You know what I mean? Like,
we're bringing it.
They're all about it. You know what I mean? It's just getting them introduced to the idea. I have kids that be like, nah, I ain't trying to do this college thing. And then I talk to their parents the next day. They're like, hey, I'm supposed to come talk to you about college. You know what I mean? Because the parents are in it, man. And
that's the biggest thing. And once they know that their parents are supportive,
right,
I think it really changes the outlook. Like you said, I mean, if we're not talking the language, they're just like, why even bother with it?
Mm-hmm.
So I think what you're doing is phenomenal. Man, I have so many things that just popped through because we're starting the Chingona Art and Cultural Center and next year. And I would love, love, love to be able to have your bike program with you in it, not somebody else, but maybe hopefully you bring that to, because it's actually going to be with the Porterhouse KC. We're working with the entrepreneurship program with them in the Black community. And I did that on purpose so that way the Latino community can be connected with the Black community, because we need to start building those bridges. And so that would just be, I think, those kids, the Latinos and the Black community together making bikes and knowing that this is what wow.
Well, that's what we did. So here at the very end, we changed the bike club from Hispanic Leadership Lowrider Bike Club to Olathe Leadership Lowrider Bike Club, and we started being more inclusive. Mm-hmm. And man, what a blessing that was, man. We got kids of all kinds and colors, and it's like we all share the passion. It's amazing.
Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah. So hopefully that will work out in some way, and we can make the reach even farther, go beyond Olathe and help the kids that definitely need to hear it. Missouri and Kansas. And I know her brain is just working.
It is. I'll be texting you tonight like, Deanna, you know what?
She will.
If it ain't crazy fictional stuff, you know what else we could do?
Exactly. No, Eric, is there anything you want to tell the community? Because this is going to go on Instagram and it's on YouTube Live and on Twitter. So there's going to be other kids. We've had other kids from different states actually talk to some of our mentors that are our art mentors that were on some of our podcasts. So is there anything you want to say to anybody, even the Kansas City kids, about, your last words here?
Absolutely. I want to tell them, number one, keep your head up, keep moving forward, get that education, get involved. And more importantly, when you get there and when you become a doctor, a lawyer, a cop, whatever it is you want to be, don't forget about the people behind you and reach back and pull them up too. It's important that we help each other out. So that's what I got. You guys are awesome, and I love every single one of these kids, even if I don't know you guys. And I'm here for all of y'all.
I appreciate you, Eric. And can people reach out to you? Is that something they can do, or do they have to go through the school, or like if they just want to have questions?
Yeah, no, they can reach out. I don't know if you can even post my email address on there, but they can send me an email.
Tell me real quick, and I can put it on the.
Yeah, so it's EEERAZO at olatheschools.org.
Okay, perfect. That's going to go on all the comments there. And then that way, if anybody has any questions, we can definitely put them through that so that they can email you for sure.
Absolutely. Awesome.
Well, Lori, I appreciate you. You want to have any last words for anybody or do you have a last question for Eric?
No, I don't. I just think it's exciting. I'm going to share this information with the powers to be, because we're always looking for resources to increase student engagement, to build those relationships. It was a great conversation.
It really was. I'm so glad you shared your story. I know that takes a lot, but we needed to hear it. And that's just funny that, Lori and I kind of say that, like I said, parallel. And I know there's many people out there who needed to hear it as well. So we just appreciate everything you do. Congratulations on everything. Keep being a part of those boards and that voice for the Latino community out there. We appreciate you so much, Eric.
Thank you so much.
We'll see you later.
Bye.